It's the first UFC pay-per-view of 2023. And here we are to do the UFC breakdown for... Wait, what number? What number even is this? I can't believe I forgot the number. UFC 283. Anyways, this is a good card. This is a very solid card. You've got a double title fight. Both title fights are interesting, but I think somewhat well poisoned for things outside of the octagon. You've got Gilbert Burns versus Neil Magny, which I can think of better things to do with both guys. But, still fun. Jessica Andrade versus Lauren Murphy, fun. Paul Craig versus Johnny Walker. Let's be honest, two horrendously flawed fighters fighting each other is probably going to be fun. It's probably going to be a little bit wacky. Shogun is on the card, and that is potentially sad, potentially awesome, because the problem is that Shogun at this point might just absolutely, lose a tire in there. I'm actually rather looking forward to Gregory Rodriguez versus Bruno Ferreira. I think it's a weird matchup for Rodriguez, and I get that it's a late notice replacement. The fight he had with Brad Tavares made some sense, but in a way, this is probably a better fight, just a less meaningful one. I kind of like a lot of the newcomers, actually. Bruno Ferreira, Mel Costa, the Bonfim brothers. Looking forward to their debuts. Jelton Almeida's on the card. Big fan of his. Warley Alves versus Nicholas Dalby. That's a fun potential fight. That has a lot of awesomeness to it. And I'm not as keen on Daniel Marcos and Luan Lacerda, who are the other two newcomers on the card. But they have their own upsides, I think. I'm not looking forward to Josiane Nunez versus Zara Farron because there's a lot of potential downside to that fight and not a ton of upside. But that's kind of the one dud on the card that I'm just not really looking forward to. So, hey, congratulations on that. We do have to remind everyone that, we are in the midst of Power Slap promotion time period. Which is, and it's a bit weird. That there are some weird takes on Power Slap. There are people why do you dislike Power Slap? It's two consenting adults doing something. We shouldn't stop that. We stop a lot of things that are two consenting adults. Duels. Someone suggested that they were still legal in Texas, and that actually wouldn't surprise me. But for the most part, illegal, despite two consenting adults. A lot of the United States is also hung up on the trans, the LGBTQ movements, and so on. So this idea that just wave it away. Oh, they're consenting adults. They're good. My thing is I don't understand how someone of sound mind consents to the Power Slap League. I know this sounds weird for a guy who's a big fan of combat sports and is here talking to you about combat sports, but combat sports serve an actual purpose to get into. Why did I start training boxing way back in the day? The answer is pretty simple. I was getting picked on, and it was a way of self-defending myself. Power Slap is literally taking away any form of intelligent defense and just getting hit. I'm not saying there's not technique to it. There's technique to generate power with the slap. There are some... I don't even want to say technique, but there are some principles to absorbing a slap properly. Don't get there are things there, but there's no form of intelligent defense. And with what we know about CTE, why is this a thing? Why would you sign up for this without being a little crazy? I use the comparison of Datsik still being booked in combat sports events. That shouldn't be legal. Datsik is insane. Certifiably insane. You can't... He can't consent to anything. His view of the world doesn't really exist, and that kind of feels like where the slap thing is. Anyways, what I'm getting into is that we're promoting Dana White's Power Slap after Dana White slapped his wife. And he should be facing some kind of punishment. May I suggest, because Dana White has said, what should my punishment be? A sizable donation to domestic abuse support services, charities, and so on. There you go. And anyone who's like, but what about the wife? Well, half that donation by marital law is hers. Hey, look at that. It covers both bases. And if you believe Dana White did nothing wrong, I don't know what to tell you. You may not have a super great grasp on like power dynamics, frankly, and are probably really just wishing that you could hit a woman and justify it. There you go. So that's out of the way. Let's get moving on. Stupid Twitter take of the day. Well, two of them. I'm in a debate about whether Anthony Smith is a journeyman, which, to be clear, Anthony Smith has like 17 career losses. He's lost to guys like Josh Neer and Jake Heck. Granted, the Heck one at least is early in his career. Yeah, he's a journeyman. Like, I don't say that is a bad thing. Like, I actually a fairly big fan of Anthony Smith. I enjoy listening to his podcast. I enjoy listening to him talk about MMA. I enjoy his fights, for the most part. There's a couple of stinkers in there. But he is a guy who definitely is of the journeyman variety. Hard capped on a physical level. Has a bunch of losses. Regional kingpin, don't get me wrong. A dude who beating him means something. But journeyman, fair comparison. Saying this because he kind of towed the company line a little bit by crapping on Francis Ngannou's boxing prospects. I don't necessarily disagree with him. Like, I've said this, like, on the whole Francis Ngannou leaving the UFC thing. Like, if this works out for him, big applause. But realistically speaking, there's a chance that this just blows up in his face. And he winds up doing low-level MMA for not a lot of money. Probably, like a reasonable amount of money for what he's doing. But, like, probably would have made more in the UFC. So my whole view on it is like, let's wait and see and find out. But there is a chance that this really just doesn't go anywhere. Anyways. And the other thing is, I had to explain to someone how like the COVID vaccine probably doesn't play a role in Stephan Bonner's death, because they were listing off athletes who have died, and they're in a big like COVID skepticism rant. And there's some reason to be, vaccine skeptical. But a lot of the time, these people are asking for things that are already happening. But like with Bonner, it's like you literally have the guy ranting in a hospital on camera about how he wants his painkillers and no, he's not vaccinated. So any idea that like Stephan Bonner should fuel your vaccine skepticism is wrong. I feel like I can say this because the family hasn't exactly hid his cause of death or anything. So I think we can say this, that Stephan Bonner probably died mostly of, the fact that he was a mixed martial arts fighter and pro wrestler, and probably made use of some PEDs. He has one positive test. And was notably a little bit more buff during his pro wrestling career. So probably is some steroid use, and the cause of death that he has is something that is related to steroids. So there you go. If there's any mystery, there you go. Let's move on to the fights. UFC 205-pound title fight, light heavyweight title. Glover Teixeira, the former champion, versus Jamal. I back Dana White against anyone who says that he did something wrong. Hill. Hill's 2 inches taller, 3 inches in reach. I'd like to break down this fight in a really like super interesting way, because there are elements of it that are strong, are interesting. Like Jamal Hill is a good fighter. Dude's athletic, dude's powerful, has a fairly creative boxing game, works and kicks well. But like I keep coming back down to this idea that, number one, we really haven't seen him deal with a persistent grappling threat, because I don't count Thiago Santos as that. Like, yeah, stuffing 14, I believe, of 20 takedowns from Thiago Santos looks great on paper until you realize, like, what is Santos's takedown rate? They were bad takedowns. They were bad. Glover Teixeira is a better takedown artist. than anyone that's tried to take him down, frankly. Because the only guys remotely comparable, and I would say they're even below him, are like Jimmy Crute and OSP. And in the case of them, they didn't get going. Like Jimmy Crute lasted under a minute. OSP largely just consented to a kickboxing match with him. And, this is also a question of fighter IQ with Jamal Hill because dude had Paul Craig hurt and was like, nah, in the guard I go. Oh God, he almost mangled my arm. I'm gonna go back in there. Like there is a lack of fear to a certain degree, I think, in Jamal Hill as a grappler that will probably get him into trouble here. Now, we do have to say, Glover Teixeira, 43 years old, I do believe. Yeah, 43 years old. Chance of just completely falling off and not having durability anymore, it's there. I mean, we honestly, we thought we were there. We thought with Glover Teixeira that we were at the point where he was kind of done. Like if I pull up the record here for a hot second, there was a point back in like 2018, 2017 where he got, beaten by Corey Anderson, got murked by Anthony Johnson, got knocked out by Alexander Gustafsson. Granted, in that meantime, still did defeat Misha Serkinov and Jared Cannonier. Got badly hurt by Carl Roberson. Got hurt in the Yanko Jalaba fight, where we were kind of pretty sure he was done. And to be honest, even up until the Thiago Santos fight in 2020, where he did actually get hurt really badly by Santos, and then came back to rear naked choke him. We had other, we still had questions. And then he beat Jan Blachowicz, and then he had that fantastic fight with Yuri Prohaska. I hope we get a rematch of it at some point. The thing is just that I don't trust Jamal Hill. I trust that Jamal Hill has the physicality and even the technique to possibly win this fight, but I don't trust that he has the ability to put it all together. He has never really seemed to me to be a guy who problem solves in the cage. A little bit against OSP, I guess. But Glover has good takedown entries, very reliable on a single leg, turning the corner, running the pipe. He gets people down with very few exceptions. There are some really good wrestlers. Corey Anderson comes to mind. But he didn't have a problem getting Yuri Prohaska down. Yuri Prohaska represents a much higher physical level than Jamal Hill. And a wilder level, a more dangerous level, a more chaotic level, a more finishing level than Jamal Hill does. Yuri Prohaska is a guy who has a win over one of the Nemkovs. Did he fight? We're going off topic a little bit here, but did he fight King Mo the second? Yes, he did. Came back and beat King Mo after losing to him the first time. Had a history of actually dealing with dudes with reasonable wrestling games, and Glover didn't really have a problem getting him down. He had a problem controlling him. He had a problem, winning the fight because he did get submitted, but he was winning up at that point. And I can't help but think that he just gets Hill down, gets his back, and submits him. And if there's if Glover Teixeira is still more or less Glover Teixeira, he's still, somewhere near the top of his game, then he can do this. He can do this. I have faith. The betting public apparently doesn't, because Glover is a small underdog, plus 104 to plus 128. But it is weird seeing Hill at minus 125 to minus 148 for this fight. It is surprising on that. I know I'm always a bit late to the party when it comes to getting on hype trains. Not always. There have been times where I got on it quite early. Cain Velasquez maybe was the best example, where I was on that hype train after he beat Jeremiah Constant and Bodog. But it does seem like this is the wrong time for him to be the favorite. There's a couple of interesting favorites on this card, to be honest. Just looking down here, I'm a little bit surprised Ihor Potara is the favorite. I'm a little bit surprised at the favorite being shown to Gabriel Bonfim. I'm surprised Jelton Almeida is the favorite he is. We'll get more into that later, but he should be the favorite. I'm a little... I'm a little surprised. There's one particular bet line on the Nicholas Dalby fight that is very weird. We'll get to that. And I'm a little bit surprised that Simon Oliveira is the favorite for his fight. But there's a couple of very live dogs here, and this is the first of them. Glover Teixeira. I'm going with the submission, and let's move on to the next fight. Title fight: Davidson Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno, flyweight title. Fourth time these two men have met. The record is 1-1-1. Although a lot of people do think Moreno should be up 2-0-1 on the matter because they think that he won the third fight, which Moreno got, or that Figueiredo got the nod in. Moreno 2 inches taller, 2 inches longer, so he has the measurables, but that hasn't really been a problem. Like Figueiredo has been able to get inside and fight at his range and make it a pocket fight. We've got to talk about the James Krause thing here because, of course, one of the big adjustments that Moreno made relatively recently was going to Glory MMA and Fitness. I still don't know why he made that move. I've said this repetitively. James Krause must have some personal magnetism, some charisma, some snake charmer ability in person because I've never really seen what fighter he's really turned into something. He's not a bad coach. I want to be clear on that. He wasn't a bad coach. But when you're like talking about like a guy who's touring the super camps like Moreno was, why you pick Glory MMA and Fitness, I don't know. And this goes deeper because, of course, Moreno was actually pretty attached to Jim Krause. He was not like, I think it was Julian Marquez who like instantly flew the coop. And a couple others that like instantly flew the coop. He was more like him and like Jeff Molina were the two like and Tim Elliott were the three guys like talking about support for James Krause. So leaving the camp, new camp, not necessarily willingly going there, probably not fully settled in. We got to talk about that as like a prep problem. Whereas Figueiredo is comfortable. You know, he is where he is. He's assuming he's not nursing any major injuries or anything. He's probably going to be at his best. And he already had the physical edges to, you know, make up for preparation problems. Because like Moreno in this fight is not an unathletic fighter by any means. He has his own physical gifts, durability, cardio, speed, etc. But like Figueiredo is the monster of the flyweight division. Super powerful, has the power you do not see a lot of at flyweight. Very strong, very fast. Does get tired, but seems to be able to like come back of it, get like second wins and stuff. So in order to beat him, Moreno's got to be at that apex. He's got to be at that razor sharp edge of making every combination work, mixing in some takedowns, probably being able to handle some grappling to problems with Figueiredo, and like having it broken down and like being really, really comfortable with the game plan. I don't see that being the case with him being forced to change camps. And I've had no grasp on this this series of fights, period. Like I don't think anyone does. I think the twists and turns of the Moreno Figueiredo battleground have been so many, like even in the fights themselves, not like fight to fight to fight, but I mean like minute to minute, round to round, where these guys are figuring out something that works that wasn't working before, or trying something new that is now working, and so on. So like I don't know, but I can't in good conscience be like Moreno's the lesser athlete. He's changed coaches. He's changed camps. He's not wanted to change camps. This isn't like some kind of well thought out decision. It's been forced on him by the anti-gambling, anti-betting stuff going on with James Krause. So I am picking Davidson Figueiredo to win a decision because I still don't think he can finish Moreno because Moreno is incredibly hard-headed. As it appears there is some water running. I apologize if you can hear that. But like, yeah, Brandon Moreno, virtually unfinishable. Figueiredo has not managed to do it. Alexander Pantoja didn't do it. Sergio Pettis didn't do it. Well, Pantoja did on the Open Fighter, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, I still think it goes the distance, but yeah, I'm going to go with Figueiredo. I don't see Moreno performing at the 110% that he needs to win this kind of fight. And it's a pick and fight on the betting lards, and I get it. Figueiredo can be found at underdog odds at plus 100. You can find Moreno at underdog odds at plus 100. Moreno, I guess, nominally is the favorite because his furthest, his widest line is minus 130, whereas Figueiredo's is minus 125. But it is this is going to be so fascinating. So fascinating. Admittedly, I will say this. I got super hyped for the third fight between these two and actually found myself live being kind of let down by it. And it's not that it was a bad fight. Looking back on it, fantastic. But like it got hyped up in my brain to the point where probably nothing really could really adapt, could really have lived up to it. And this time, I don't think I have that problem because like I do have the drama with Moreno to think about and be like, how is that going to affect him if he comes out a little bit flat? That's going to be interesting. Yeah, I've got Figueiredo, but if you got Moreno, I got no problems with that. Gilbert Burns versus Neil Magny in a welterweight fight. Magny 5 inches taller, 9 inches longer, and it does not matter because Neil Magny's great thing or great ability is he's the snake charmer of all snake charmers. He makes you just uncomfortable enough at range that you come inside, you clinch with him, and he just sucks the life out of you like some kind of MMA vampire. The problem is that Gilbert Burns is a lot closer to someone like Neil Magny than to Daniel Rodriguez. Or pardon me, Michael Chiesa. Is a lot closer to Michael Chiesa than Daniel Rodriguez. And what I mean by that is that we have seen that you can, with sufficient grappling strength, takedown acumen, beat Magny. You can. It's been done by a couple of people, not a huge number of people, but a couple. I mentioned Michael Chiesa. He's a great example of that. Way back on The Ultimate Fighter, actually, to a certain degree, Cameron Diffley did some of those things, albeit on the way to losing. But like Seth Baczynski, granted very early on in his career, Demian Maia in 2015, Rafael Dos Anjos in 2017, Michael Chiesa, like I said, in 2021, and even Shavkat Rakhmonov in 2022, they had success in the clinch. It's not impossible. It's just that he is much better in the clinch than the average fighter. But when he comes to facing guys who are top 10 or have top 10 potential, have elite skill sets in the clinch and as grapplers, he has actually failed. And Gilbert Burns is that. Gilbert Burns is a phenomenal grappler. Gilbert Burns is a very good clinch fighter. It's not that he himself has not been outdone or beaten in the clinch, because in some ways, in many ways, that's what Khamzat Chimaev did to him. It's what Kamaru Usman had partial success with, but at the same time, Demian Maia didn't, Tyron Woodley didn't. These are not bad clinch grapplers. So I'm going with Gilbert Burns, and I feel like I'm not talking out of school with that one because Gilbert Burns is a major favorite on this card. You can get him at anywhere from minus 351 to minus 530. Neil Magny is at plus 275 to plus 385. I've got Burns by submission, personally, if you can find that. I think he does finish him. And, I've made mistakes trusting Gilbert Burns before, and he's let me down, but I don't think that this has the hallmark signs of that moment. And as a range striker, of course, I've talked mostly about this as a clinch fight, but as a range striker, Gilbert Burns is quite good. Gilbert Burns has good power, good explosiveness, good low kicking game. He's really come a long way. He's not just a BJJ guy. And it's not like Neil Magny is some kind of maestro of the range game, because, go watch his fight with Santiago Ponzinibbio. That is one of the most shit kickings you'll ever see between two dudes who are legitimately on the same level. If we're talking about, Magny's probably above Ponzinibbio in terms of career achievements. Granted, that's probably because Ponzinibbio had lost a good part of his prime due to illness and injury. But, two guys that, going into that fight, this is kind of a pick and fight, and just watching Ponzinibbio just wreck him has to kind of ruin any kind of idea that Granted, Magny has a long reach. He has actually a pretty decent jab, but no, I don't think he even particularly beats Burns at range. And again, the fact is, he's never really looking to stay at range because Magny's idea is like, I'm going to make you uncomfortable at range and you're going to come to me and we can do the clinch thing. And yeah, Burns all the way. Jessica Andrade versus Lauren Murphy. Murphy is surprisingly 6 inches longer in reach. I never really think of her as having particularly long reach, but I guess she does. I know Andrade is short and, of course, is a straw weight, essentially, in size. But, yeah. Even with that said, yes, Murphy is bigger. Murphy is pretty well-rounded, like good boxer, educated, jab, throws in good combinations. Not a lot of power, though. Not a lot of horsepower. Can wrestle, can scramble, can do all the things, but, like, is kind of defined by, like, not really having high-level physicality in any real regard. And Jessica Andrade is the complete opposite. Not anyone's idea of a technical fighter. Not anyone's idea of a technical fighter. Like, don't, do not learn to fight like Jessica Andrade, because you need Jessica Andrade's beast level physicality to make it work. But super strong, powerful, fast, explosive, etc. She does all the things that have historically given Lauren Murphy like trouble. Like, Lauren Murphy is the sort of girl that if you turn it into just a technique fight like Miesha Tate or Joanne Wood, who the heck is Lilia Shakarova? Is that somebody who got married? Oh yes, it's the Uzbekistani girl. Okay, yeah, I think her name changed. Roxanne Modaffari, another example of this. Even Andrea Lee, she gets the job done. But anytime she's been asked to face somebody who's a monster, Valentina Shevchenko, Sajara Eubanks, even like Liz Carmouche and Sarah McMahon on like a way lower level back in like 2015, 2014, hasn't been able to do it. And that's the thing, is that at range, Andrade has the speed, Andrade has the power, Andrade has the explosiveness. She has stunningly good cardio. In the clinch, she's incredibly powerful. She is, I believe her nickname translates to pile driver, and it's incredibly fitting. There is no safe area for Lauren Murphy in this fight. Like, even if she somehow gets on top of Andrade, which is very hard to do, I don't even see that as terribly safe, because Andrade is the sort of girl who like just kind of bench presses people off of her and locks on submissions that have no business actually working. The Amanda Lemos submission is probably the perfect example of this, where like, who does that? Who does that? So many X factors in the favor of Jessica Andrade, and I'm going to pick her here. I'm going to pick her by TKO. Murphy doesn't usually get submitted. And it's just kind of a beast. Like, and I feel bad about it because like Lauren Murphy is the type of fighter I want to see succeed, because she's going back to like the Anthony Smith thing. Like, she's trying to make the absolute most of the physicality she has. She's smart. She's developed tactics and strategies and everything to deal with challenges and make the most of what she's got. Whereas Andrade has developed in some ways, but is still kind of just like, I don't really need technique, bro. I kind of just throw things around and it works. The betting odds are in Andrade's favorite here. She's a minus 485 to minus 530, and Murphy is plus 350 to plus 400. So like, I'm not saying anything that anyone else isn't. Now the next fight though is interesting. 205-pound fight between Paul Craig, the Bear Jew, and Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker, 3 inches taller, 6 inches longer. These two are incredibly flawed fighters. Like, when it really honestly comes down to it, they are just really flawed fighters. Johnny Walker is a whirling dervish of technical flashes and genius as a striker and finishing ability and physicality and amazing power, and who went through a period of becoming really, really boring and maybe is kind of figuring some things out now. I don't know. I still think that SBG Ireland is the wrong place for you, Johnny Walker. Please go somewhere else, like King's MMA. Imagine what King's MMA would do with Johnny Walker. Oh, my brain needs that now, and probably it's not going to get it. And in Paul Craig's case, you have a guy who is a phenomenal grappler, great finishing artist, but not great takedowns. Does not have much of a shot. As a striker, is I guess serviceable, and it works against other grapplers or guys who are just not very good, if we're being honest. But like, also getting cracked by a lot of different people over his UFC run. Largely is losing fights until he starts winning them. The best examples of this are probably the Nikita Krylov and Magomed Ankalaev fights. Yes, he did absolutely destroy Shogun Rua, and we're going to talk about that later. But I don't really see how he gets this fight down and gets the opportunities. I mean, I do, because Johnny Walker is a chaotic mess that probably could pull like a Jamal Hill, where he just willingly sticks his head into a bear trap by going into the guard of Paul Craig. But that's something Walker hasn't really done. Like, for all Walker's faults, and there are many, and I listed a lot of them, he does seem to understand danger. Like, he has that spidey sense. And yeah, no, I mean, I can picture in my head right now what a Paul Craig win looks like, but I don't see how he gets there without eating tremendous amounts of pain and damage. So I'm going with Johnny Walker by TKO. That being said, Johnny Walker, incredibly unreliable. Please do not bet on this fight, despite the fact that the odds are kind of close. You can get decent value on Johnny Walker at minus 175 to minus 210, and Paul Craig at plus 150 to plus 178 is a tempting bet. But don't touch this. Don't touch this fight. Mauricio Shogun Rua Ior Portara, which, speaking of do not touch this fight, don't get me wrong, Shogun should have retired some time ago. Like, let me trace back to the point where Mauricio Shogun Rua should have been done. We're probably, honestly, real talk, is probably back in like 2014. Losing that tremendous fight against Dan Henderson and then losing to OSP. That should have been the end of it. That 2015 fight with Little Nog, that should have been it. And then somehow he's kind of like resurged, like to beat Corey Anderson. And then Gian Vellante, lose to Anthony Smith, beat Tyson Pedro, which is still kind of surprising. Have a split draw with Paul Craig, beat Little Nog again. But please let this be the end of it. Like, watching him tap out to strikes to Paul Craig and get manhandled by Paul Craig was high point MMA bad feels. And then the fight with OSP, I guess, wasn't sad, but at the same time, it was not exciting in any way. They've given him pretty much the lowest end of the division that they can. Ior Portara is a reasonable physical specimen. He's 2 inches taller, but actually has less reach. He is kind of a chaotic striking mess. Doesn't really have a great grappling game or wrestling game. Got beat by Nick Negamariano, which I think Kennedy Njoku kind of showed isn't, or not. No, not Kennedy. Carlos Ulberg kind of showed is kind of damning for a guy with Portaria's build. I'm picking Shogun because Portaria has bad cardio and is just kind of a mess. And please retire. Please retire, Shogun. Please. Please, 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 please. My memories of Shogun from back in Pride are just so amazing. The soccer kicks, the diving stomps, the jumping stuff. The Muay Thai genius mixed with like good BJJ and like solid wrestling and like honestly one of the few legitimately technical in every aspect of the fight. 205ers from back in the day and probably in history. And, became a UFC champion, was a Pride GP champion, never the Pride champion, because he trained with Vanderlei Silva, I think, predominantly, is the issue there. Like, training partner had the belt. Even went up to heavyweight. But so many injuries have derailed him. His career is legendary, regardless of what this fight is. But he should have gone away a long time ago. Please win this fight and then retire. Because I think Portaria, there are some basic building blocks there. Like I said, there is some okay physicality and whatever, but he's not physical enough to make this completely reckless style, lack of substance, lack of nuance, lack of structure style actually work long term. So it would be better for him to lose this fight, because if he beats Shogun, suddenly he's got that going for him. Like, oh, I beat Shogun. I'm actually really good. Convincing himself that he's really good, and also convincing the UFC to probably throw him in there with somebody who's going to murder him. Go Shogun. You're the underdog at plus 168 to plus 188. Portaria is minus 193 to minus 230. I'm not saying Shogun should be the favorite, but Portaria is just not very good. I'm hoping for good things. All right. We are away from the feels bad fight, and we are to the feels good fight. Gregory Rodriguez versus Bruno Ferreira. Rodriguez 5 inches taller, 3 inches longer. Rodriguez is quickly becoming my favorite middleweight in the world. Dude is a powerful striker. He's a crazy grappler. To his own detriment. I want to be clear on this. To his own detriment, because when he gets positions on the ground, and he goes for things, he almost always loses the position. He is a submission over position guy. I'm here for it. I think it's a bad idea, but I'm here for it. And just insanely durable, really surprisingly good cardio. Not in the sense that he doesn't get tired, but it's kind of like, who was I talking about earlier? Davidson Figueiredo, where he'll get tired and then he'll have a second and a third wind, and it's ridiculous. I would have picked him to beat Tavares, because I'm not really picking Tavares to win fights anymore after the Dricus Duplessis fight that he had. And I'm picking him to win this one, but I want to talk about Bruno Ferreira here for a moment, because I think he's really good. At 5'10", I do wonder if if middleweight is actually going to be a place for him. But built like an absolute brick house. Varies up his tactics. He'll throw a power lead jab. He'll throw a hook off of both hands. He'll work combinations off of stomp kicks, which is very cool. Actually really well put together game. There are problems, don't get me wrong. There are some defensive liabilities in his game that almost always you see coming off the Brazilian circuit into the UFC. We almost always see this. So there is that. But there's enough diversity, enough interesting chaos that he can win fights. And he's actually a pretty good grappler. He's hard to control. He's a power, like I said, he's a brick house, super powerful. He's a tree stump of a man. And I think he's going to be very exciting. That being said, he's coming in on short notice, and I'm picking Rodriguez, because Rodriguez is a nightmare. Super tough, like I said, capable striker, both at range and in the clinch. Aggressive on the ground, so Ferreira will probably have some moments, but yeah, I will take Rodriguez to win against more or less anyone except for the very top of the division. I look at him, and that's just what I think. This guy should be undefeated in the UFC. I don't believe he lost to Armin Petrosyan. That being said, dude did get knocked out by Jordan Williams, which will always kind of stick with me. But the Dusko Todorovic, Julian Marquez, Chidi Njokuani. These are guys that have a lot of the elements of Bruno Ferreira, but with more veteran guile to them. So yeah, Rodriguez by TKO, because he does love pounding people out. And the betting odds, minus 286 to minus 340 on Rodriguez, plus 240 to plus 255 on Fahea. Sounds about right, honestly. Yeah, no, that sounds about right. Thiago Moises versus Milk Costa. So this is another short notice replacement fight. This was going to be Costa, or not Costa. Moises versus Guram Kutaladze. And I had Kutaladze winning that fight pretty easily. And I was really, really looking forward to that. But instead, we get the Brazilian Scott Jorgensen because he's got the, I don't know if he has the same issue, but like some form of vitiligo or vitiligo sort of thing. Costa's an inch taller, has 2.5 inches of reach. I like Costa. I really do. Fun addition to the roster. Likes to kick, will spin, brings that chaoticness without completely losing his defensive form. Switches stances really well. I worry about killer instinct to him. Like there were a couple of fights I was watching on the regional scene. One was in LFA, one was in Brazil, where like he'll have I think there was a third one. He'll have someone like really, really hurt. And then kind of just let them off the hook. And that does worry me. That really does worry me. I'd also like to see him jab a lot more. He has a jab, but there's just no frequency he throws it. Like he'll throw a lot off the power hand, switch stances, that kind of thing to set up combinations. But if he had that jab and that range keeping capability a little bit more, I think he'd be a way better fighter. That's something I really want to see him get in there. He's not a bad wrestler. He's not a bad grappler. He has some submissions. But at the end of the day, I do look at Thiago Moises. I look at the counters that he offers. There are openings to land those counters. He is actually a pretty good wrestler and grappler in his own right. And kind of tricks people into thinking that he's like more of a Muay Thai striker. I think part of it is like all the pictures of him, it's always like him in the Muay Thai shorts. And like, you know, looking like when he came in, I swear, I was not immune to this. A lot of people thought he was going to be like a striker, and he's really a grappler. Stands kind of like a Muay Thai fighter a lot of the time, and kind of lures you in. I just see at some point him getting to the ground and probably submitting Costa, or riding out a decision. But I'm interested in this one. I'll go with the decision, but I am interested in this one. I like Costa, I really do. Moises is probably a little bit too wide of a favorite. He's minus 360 to minus 460. Costa plus 285 to plus 320. I think this is a closer matchup than the Fajea-Rodriguez fight, and they're both short notice. And Rodriguez is a notably smaller favorite than Moises. So I am a little bit worried about that. Gabriel Bonfim, the first of the Bonfim brothers, against Munir Lazzez. Weird matchup, because Munir Lazzez has been doing some pretty good things in the UFC. Even if his links to Daniel Kinahan makes me kind of want to see him get cooled down, and like also a complete lack of finishing in the UFC will also come into play here. But I'm happy they put this together. I think it's a good fight. Lazzez has 4 inches of reach just by being the same height. Lazzez normally can set the range with like a good jab and some kicks, but like Bonfim went out there with a 6'5" dude in Dana White Contender Series and was just like, no, I'm gonna pressure you. I'm gonna, and it really wasn't a problem. It really wasn't a problem to get Trey Waters to fight him in the pocket. Lazzez is a way better fighter than Waters is, obviously, despite being 4 inches shorter. Like he's a well-schooled volume kickboxer, outside guy, hard to take down as well, like pretty well rounded. But I really, really like what I see with Gabriel Bonfim. There's a lot of physicality that I really really like. Now, granted, I will say this, when he's throwing straight punches, his defense actually looks pretty good. When he starts mixing in hooks, that's when he becomes very, very open to counters. Does move his head, but at the same time, very there to get hit. Lazzez is going to give him a bell rattling at some point in these exchanges. But like fast hands, has a variety of ways that he enters, and has pretty good pressure footwork as well. Lazzez, that counterpuncher, there's going to be some very, very good changes or things to play here. And of course, we haven't even gotten to Bonfim's best thing, which is that he is a boa constrictor. Dude can choke the life out of anything. He is a welterweight Alexei Olenek. Dude is really, 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 really impressive on the ground. But at the same time, I don't think he's actually a very good wrestler. His takedowns tend to come off of catching kicks or prolonged chain wrestling exchanges rather than just like being able to secure a takedown kind of at will. So I do kind of think we're not going to see a lot of that unless something weird happens. But I'm going to roll the dice on him here to pick up the win. And I was kind of pleasantly surprised to see him at a minus 165 to minus 190 and Lazez at plus 140 to plus 155. I kind of do think the Lazez has achieved more in MMA and probably should be the favorite here. But like that's close enough lines that actually there's like, betting makes some sense on both ways. Whereas I was kind of thinking Lazez would be like a plus 300 favorite or something. Pardon me, a minus 300 favorite. And that was not the case. I'm really looking forward to this fight. I'm picking Bonfim by decision. I think that he has the venom and the sting that Lazez seems to have had a hard time replicating in the UFC. Like when he hits you, it's a traumatic event. Whereas Lazez is kind of just touching people up. So it's kind of one of those fights where like Lazez may actually get the edge in volume and maybe even look like the cleaner fighter, but probably lose just because Bonfim has a couple of big moments that Lazez cannot replicate to balance out. So Bonfim by decision, the first of the Bonfims. I'm taking Jelton Almeida to beat Shamil Abdurakhimov. I've broken this fight down like before a number of times. Almeida is just like actually really athletic, really good at taking down, really good back take game. He's long, and the betting odds are minus 975 to minus 1205 on Almeida. That's too wide. I'll say that because Abdurakhimov is much better than like Parker Porter. But Abdurakhimov also getting a bit older as well. Plus 600, plus 700. He's not been very durable. I have Almeida by TKO. I swear I've broken that fight down like 3 times now. So, sorry if that was a bit abrupt. Terrence McKinney versus Bonfim number 2, Ismail Bonfim. McKinney 2 inches taller, 2.5 longer. I think we know what McKinney is at this point. He's a physical dynamo, like super powerful, super explosive, super fast. He has all the Joe Rogan for black people code words. Super dangerous at the beginning of the fight. Rushes out there, but he does get tired. His stand-up does break down. His defense breaks down, like just period. But particularly as a striker. And we saw that with the loss to Drew Dober. We saw that with the loss to not Grant Dawson. Sean Woodson. Why do I always mix those two up? They're not remotely similar fighters even. I wonder, were they in the same Dana White Contender Series or something? I don't know. And also Derek Minner, even to a certain extent. Managed to take advantage of that and all that. And I like Ismail Bonfim. I like Ismail actually the better of the two Bonfims. I think he's the better technician. I think he is incredibly well put together. Great counterpuncher, works the body really well. I love that. Works in combination, keeps defense pretty good actually. There are some defensive limitations to him. There are some openings to be found. Good pressure footwork, can fight off of his back foot as well. Like I really like Bonfim, Ismail Bonfim. The only problem is I think he doesn't have what makes his brother so functional. Is his brother has that venom, both on the ground as the boa constrictor strangle the life out of you, and as the powerful hitter. I don't think Bonfim has that. I've seen Bonfim hit people with like clean counters for 15 minutes, dig hard to the body, and just not stop people. Just not actually get the job done. And I think that against Terrence McKinney, you need some form of exceptionally deadly finishing ability. Like if you think about like Sean Woodson, super tall, powerful, super interesting angles with strikes or with submissions. If you look at Derek Minner, not physically impressive in any way, but like a hell-bent man for like submissions who will chase them with an aggressive, psychotic level that is the only thing that made him functional as a fighter. And Drew Dober you have amazingly, you have actually pretty good power and amazing durability. And I don't think Bonfim has any of the above. I think he's going to have a long stay in the UFC. I'm looking forward to this. I'm hoping we don't end up with like a greater and lesser brother combination. Emelianenko's come to mind. Both sets of Miller brothers come to mind. The Guidas, the Lozons. So many times you get this, two fighting brothers, and one's actually pretty good, and the other one has his good points, but it never comes together. I'm hoping it comes together with both of them, but I do think McKinney will win this fight via knockout. He's just a little bit too insane. He's the favorite of -120 to -138, and Bonfim is +100, +111. That makes a ton of sense because I don't think McKinney should ever be a major favorite. Not after the self-destructions we have seen. And Bonfim is very, very good. I'm looking forward to this fight as well. Warlley Alves versus Nicholas Dalby. I am looking forward to this fight, but also, before we get into this, we got to talk about betting odds because Bet365 has Dalby as a relatively large favorite, -150 to +125 on Alves. Alves is the favorite almost anywhere else. So if you, like me, think Warlley Alves is going to win this fight, get on that betting line. Dalby is the longer fighter at 2.5 inches of reach, but he's never really been able to really make that a functional part of his game. It's not that he doesn't have a good outside striking game. He does. But it's just, he's kind of too slow-footed to really keep people at range. Like it's not that he has bad technique when he's fighting off the back foot, but like it seems like almost anyone is able to close the distance. So I fully believe Warlley Alves can do that. Alves is actually very, very strong, very potent. People forget that after he beat Colby Covington back in the day, like there was a lot of thoughts that Warlley Alves was going to be a really top-notch fighter, and it just never came about. But there's like raw physicality there. There's a doggedness. There's a game determination to him. He has the physical X factors to define the fight. The stronger, the faster, the more explosive guy is reasonably technical. Like there are massive technical gaps, but like Dalby kind of needs to get into a position where he can brawl and not get hurt to win fights. And I don't think that happens here. I've got Warlley Alves winning decision. Dalby is super, super tough. This is gonna be a fun fight. Should be a really fun scrap. I shouldn't say will be, because we could also see Alves go out there and like just instant sub Dalby, or knock him out with like the first strike. General lines have Alves like the -120 to like -132 favorite here, and Dalby at you can get him at as much as +108. Josiane Nunez versus Zara Farron. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this fight. Nunez is a -540 to -620 favorite, despite being 6 inches shorter and 6 inches less reach. And Farron is a +380 to +425. Farron has some fluidity and grace and general athletic bearing to her, but she's not good at anything. She doesn't really keep range. Has some okay striking, but it's not actually that good. And Nunez is a good striker. I mean, don't get me wrong. She's 5'2". It's going to be a limiting factor at featherweight. There's going to be like a process where she has to kind of find her way inside. But once she does, she has power. She cracks. Farron's not the most durable, not the most defensively responsible. She's 36 or 37 years old, and we're not going to see leaps and bounds improvements from her. She's here because they wanted, at one point, they were interested in building a 145-pound division, and we're signing some warm bodies. They've kind of run out of that, so it's surprising that she's still getting this fight. But yeah, Nunez by TKO. Or KO. Moving on. Luan Lacerda versus Cody Stamann. Lacerda is taller and has apparently 8 inches of reach. I have that written down. Do I have that written down correctly? I can't. It can't be that much, can it? No, it can. 73 inches to 64 and a half. Jesus. Staman is used to being the shorter guy, though. 64 and a half inch reach guy. He is almost always battling against a reach disadvantage. Lacerda is kind of cool. Like, there's some good jiu-jitsu to him. Likes to take the back. Likes to submit people. We use the boa constrictor line again. Seems pretty athletic. Active jab on the feet. Nice body kick. Actually, legitimately, nice body kick. But he's very pressurable. He can be put on the back foot. And his striking kind of really just has been against guys who are physically outmatched or just not particularly good strikers like other BJJ guys. And not that Stamen is a amazing striker, but like he is pretty good at pressuring. He has to be. He is a fire hydrant of a man who is going to be hard to take down. Hard to choke, although not impossible. Saeed Nurmagomedov did it. And I'm taking Stamen here. Lacerda, I think, might end up as a flyweight at some point. I think that might be better for him. But I've got Stamen here pretty. Like, I just see Stamen kind of slowly pressuring him down, landing counter strikes as he usually does, because he's got slick counter punching. Working it through, probably even getting some takedowns and working some ground control, because Lacerda will play off of his back. And I've got to go with Stamen with this one. Even though Stamen's day is coming where he's just probably going to fall out of like favor, but yeah, I think you got to take him here. And he's a minus 333 to minus 430 favorite. That's a little wide. Lacerda plus 250 to plus 310. Stamen by decision, though. He's not really a finisher. Daniel Marcos versus Simon Oliveira. Oliveira is the favorite here, minus 131 and minus 166. I don't actually buy these 5'4". He's listed 5'4". Like multiple promotions have done it, but like he seems taller. Daniel Marcos, though, is on paper 3 inches taller, 2 inches longer. Marcos is, again, another good addition. Like, I'm always a little bit worried when someone comes out the Peru regional scene. But, like, he seems to have actually pretty good striking ability. And he showed up really well. Again, another guy who's pretty creative. Has good variability as a striker. Defense needs work, but it's not garbage. He doesn't have great finishing ability. I've seen him hurt a couple of guys and not manage to finish them. So there is that. And Oliveira being like the kind of weird hodgepodge. We'll get to him, but like he's a weird finishing guy. He can fight, but like Marcos can fight at all ranges, it seems. He can fight off takedowns. He is as good of a defensive striker as you'd expect off of his regional scene. And for Oliveira, he's a Muay Thai guy whose best aspect is chokes, particularly guillotine chokes, but not a good wrestler. Not really terribly considerate, not really well put together. His fight with Tony Gravely was kind of painful to watch. Not that he like got beaten really badly or anything, but like his fight IQ decisions were just quite poor. So I see Marcos getting to do what he wants to do, which is have kind of a range / pocket kickboxing match. And fend off some takedowns, because like I said, Oliveira not very good at takedowns. He'll go for them. He's persistent about it. But like his shots come from too far away. They're very telegraphed. I actually don't really know how he got takedowns on his Contender Series fight against All Day that got him into the UFC. That was very weird. I don't really know why he got into the UFC off that fight. But and I like Oliveira. Like he's exciting enough. Like he's the bad fighter who's at least kind of exciting. But like there's a lot of holes in his game, and I think Daniel Marcos is actually a legitimately interesting up and comer. So I got Marcos by decision because I do think he's a little bit weak as a finisher. And Oliveira is pretty damn tough. What gym is it that he moved to? It doesn't say on Tapology. I know that he moved to a stateside gym. Daniel Marcos, recently before the Ultimate Fighter, or not the Ultimate Fighter, the Contender Series fight, and he'd been out for 3 years before that. So I do look forward to watching his development. And for Oliveira, has he ever been finished? I don't have a method of how Wagner Lima beat him, but it does seem like he doesn't get finished. Astro Fight Team guy. Oh, that gym. That gym is just not amazing. It manages to bring in a lot of like physical specimens and stuff, but like doesn't really develop them into anything really significant. I was asked to go through the Invicta series fight card. It wasn't amazing, Invicta 51, but hey, 2 new champions. Toledo Bernardo took the title off of Tanisha Tennant at 135, and we have a new flyweight champion in Ketlin Souza, who I think is a pretty good fighter. And Serena de Jesus lost to Olga Rubin. That's pretty fun. Claire Guthrie picked up another win. You know, it was fun, although I never like watching Katie Saul lose. I like Katie Saul. There's heart. There's, you know, she's Canadian. For one thing, and that, you know, that always gets you in a little bit. But she tries really, really, really hard, and she's just kind of like physically limited. And she lost to Reina dos Santos, who I think was one of the few people who I thought on Contender Series really looked pretty reasonable. I know she lost to Denise Gomes, but Denise Gomes is like actually pretty good. Admittedly lost to Luma Luke Bume in her debut, but I thought did enough. I think she's a pretty promising fighter, and she picked up that win over Katie Saul. So at least there's that. And Fatima Klein moved to 3-0. It was not bad. It was not bad, but the problem with Invicta is you have relatively few fights, so kind of you get like 1 or 2 kind of meh to stinker fights, and it kind of does bring the card down. But I would encourage you to still check it out. There's a lot of like ladies who come off Invicta to come into the UFC and do pretty well. So like you know, just off of this card, I wouldn't be surprised to see Ketlin Souza in the UFC doing some good things. I even wouldn't be surprised to see Christina Williams, who she beat, end up in the UFC doing some good things. Tanisha Tennant, Toledo Bernardo was in the UFC. Olga Rubin will probably be in there at some point. Claire Guthrie was on the Ultimate Fighter, so you know that they're interested in her. Like I said, I think Rayan Dos Santos will probably end up there. And Fatima Klein is like, if I recall correctly, 22 years old. She's super young, working her way through. She's a grappling aficionado, I guess. I don't know. Dynamo prodigy, whatever you want to call it. She'll be, I think, somebody to keep an eye on in the future. So, yeah, that was pretty good. I'm not going to break it down a lot because we're already over an hour. But, you know, it's worth it to check out the prospects. Anyways, let's finish it up with to the left, to the right, above, below, depending on where you're watching this, whether it's on YouTube, Acast, Spotify, Anchor, you will find a Linktree link that leads to my Discord, my social medias, and other places you can find this podcast if, like, you know, you have a slightly more preferred platform. Check it out. Show some love. The Discord server is really interesting. I'm working on improving the mixed martial arts simulator right now. So it's kind of on a little bit of a hiatus. We're going to be doing some deathmatch stuff in the meantime. But I'm working on adding some additional things to career mode that allow some interesting things with gyms and actually being able to interface with your gym and kind of build it. Because there are two members of the Discord really wanted to do that. So working on it, trying to make it work. No guarantee it will, but that's kind of why we're at a little bit of a pause. But it's fun. It's interesting. If you like mixed martial arts, you like RPG kind of role-playing style things, check it out. And with that being said, that is all for today. Enjoy the fights. And I'll also be live on the RWB YouTube channel doing race commentary on Saturday before the fights. So, hey, if you want to stop in, say hello to me and Byron, you can do that. But enjoy your day. I'm going to go get some food.